Thank you to the Decoding Nature sponsors: Five Rivers Metro Parks Foundation, Cox Arboretum Foundation, Wagner Subaru, and Wegersen Gardens Foundation.
There you go. No pinch. How's that?
On this episode of Decoding Nature, it's all about paved trails. What better way to check it out than to get out there and do it? You fired up? You ready to go? Yeah, he said. All right, here we go. I'm on my way to meet up with a paved trail consultant, Jim Schneider, to learn the backstory of how our region became home to the nation's largest network of paved trails.
Well, it all got started back in 1991 when the first transportation grant opened the first trail that was funded through the Federal Highway Department between Xenia and Yellow Springs. And, as a result, so much blossomed out from there that the International Trail Symposium Conference came to Dayton in 2017 to celebrate the fact that we had over 350 miles of trails in the Miami Valley.
And that's more than anywhere else.
Yes, more than any place else in the country. Ed Ressler, who was the director of Greene County Parks, now called Greene County Parks and Trails, was sort of the forerunner to get everything blossomed out. He was the one that first off in Xenia got the city of Xenia and the village of Yellow Springs together, leased land from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to start that first trail, and then it just kept on going. And so, and then it blossomed out from there. It sort of, Xenia became a hub, and it now went south to Cincinnati, east to Jamestown, north to Urbana and Springfield, and west to Dayton and beyond here to Trotwood. So it's been really a phenomenal success story, for Dayton to be able to have that type of, central system that radiates out from all areas.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. I find it really interesting where these paved trails are going to be placed. I mean, we're underneath State Route 40 here, and there's a rail line behind us. How does this get figured out?
Well, it started out easily with abandoned rail corridors being used, and that's how the Rails to Trails organization got formed. Was there were abandoned rail lines all over the country that could be easily converted because of their pre-engineering by the railroads to put in nice, flat, paved, easy curved trails and put them in asphalt or aggregate or cement to provide an opportunity for people to connect, and they already connected people in places. They started looking at other opportunities, so you had along rivers, along roadways, through parks. So there was a lot of different corridors that were opened up once the rail line, the abandoned rail lines, were used for trails.
And the variety is really exciting to me. I mean, I love being in the woods, right? Being in a typical park setting, but this is kind of fun. You're underneath. This is a pretty busy highway.
Right, it's a very busy highway, and look what would happen if you tried to bring a bike across this highway. So by bringing a trail under the highway, it provides that opportunity. So it makes that connection without endangering people.
Horace Huffman Jr. is a name I've heard a lot with these paved trails. What's his story?
Well, he had gone to Britain and saw the trails along the rivers in Europe and thought that was a great idea. So when he got back to Dayton, he contacted the Miami Conservancy District, and at the time, Jim Roselle was the general manager, and he worked with Horace Huffman Jr. to create that first 8.2-mile loop in downtown Dayton on both sides of the Great Miami River. It became the Great Miami River Trail.
How do all these trails get funded?
Well, most of these trails get funded through federal and state grants. So that's been the big thing. In Greene County alone, we had over $13 million received in grants for these trails, but yet our annual return on investment when we did a study in 2006 was almost $9 million a year. We take those grants and with some local money and return much more back to the communities.
Wow, this has been awesome. I've had a great time with you, Jim.
Hey.
Now it's time to connect with Randy Ryberg to understand the role Five Rivers Metro Parks plays in these paved trails and making them more accessible as a means for alternative transportation.
350 miles of trails. That's a big deal. It's a lot.
It is. It's the nation's largest paved trail network.
It's incredible. So my big question is, what percentage of that trail system does Five Rivers manage?
Well, Metro Parks manages about 54 miles of the paved trail network, primarily in Montgomery County, though we do branch into surrounding counties as well a little bit. In addition to actually managing trail, we partner with other organizations to help them develop trails. We're part of the Regional Bikeways Committee that's led by the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission, and that's trail managers from all over the region that come together to talk about trail issues, to talk about funding opportunities, and to collaborate on future trails.
Curious, how are these trails primarily used?
Well, I'd say the vast majority of folks that come out are here for recreational purposes, coming out for a ride with their family or themselves, coming out to enjoy nature, could be fitness. And then the other side of that is transportation. The trails are primarily funded with transportation dollars, federal dollars, so that's kind of always in our mindset with the trails. The other big area that we see is with bicycle touring. So we're lucky enough to have this amazing connected network, but also we're connected to larger routes that go across the country. Adventure Cycling Association has a couple routes that come through here, the Underground Railroad bicycle route and the Chicago to New York route. So these are routes that have map sets that you can purchase that tell you turn by turn how to get from point A to point B. We've also got a couple of U.S. bicycle routes that come through here, U.S. Bike Route 50 and U.S. Bike Route 25.
Like national routes?
These are national routes. It's similar to the interstate highway system. So
okay.
These are routes that use some paved trails and some roads, but similarly, they come through the Miami Valley and they all intersect here. You know, with the evolution of bicycles and e-bikes coming online and other opportunities, I think transportation for biking is really taking off. So e-bikes really came on the scene a few years ago, and I think are really making a resurgence for transportation in the paved trails. They make using a bicycle for transportation so much more accessible. You don't have to have a tremendous amount of fitness. If you're hauling a load after going to the grocery, it's a lot easier.
Or maybe if you're going to work.
Or if you're going to work, you know, you don't want to show up to work all hot and sweaty, so the e-bike is going to make your ride a lot easier. There's a lot of conversations going on right now with what is allowed. Historically, paved trails are reserved for non-motorized transportation, and the e-bike had been classified as a motorbike. And the industry behind developing these e-bikes and advocacy groups started really recognizing the implications of allowing them on paved trails and worked to get them reclassified as a bicycle. So I worked on behalf of Metro Parks to work on legislation and testified at the state to get the state to pass the law that passed a few years ago that now reclassifies e-bikes as a bicycle. So when that happened, when that passed, it basically across the state of Ohio now makes e-bikes allowed on paved trails. Other forms of transportation, there's other things popping up. Downtown, we've got the scooters.
Right.
Those are allowed in some areas and not in others. So there's additional legislation that's in the works and conversations that are happening to look at all these other forms of transportation that are popping up that are really making the paved trail network more useful for people for transportation and really opening up more possibilities for folks to get out and get to work in alternative forms of transportation.
Right, right. And I'm assuming the single wheel, sometimes I see them, it's just a wheel. I don't know what those, it's kind of like a scooter. I don't know what that is.
There's one wheels,
Yeah.
which is kind of like a single wheel skateboard. There's hoverboards. There's all sorts of new things that are popping up. And they're popping out and being developed faster than we can come up with new legislation to allow them. So they're not allowed.
So it's kind
everywhere.
of a gray area.
It is a little bit of a gray area. Metro Parks is working on our specific rules and regulations to accommodate more. But it's a conversation in the region that's looking at those things and realizing that people are using them for transportation. It's not just a toy.
Right.
It's incredible to know the coordinated efforts to pull off the nation's largest paved trail network right here in the Dayton region. In the next episode of Decoding Nature, we'll learn all about our urban parks.
Thank you to Wagner Subaru for their support of Decoding Nature. Until next time, stay outside and enjoy your Five Rivers Metro Parks.